You wowie.
In the Season 5 episode of SpongeBob SquarePants titled Boat Smarts, the episode is a parody of driving safety videos that showcase the driving habits of Squidward Tentacles, a driver with boat smarts, and SpongeBob, a driver without boat smarts. Most of the comedy in this episode stems from Squidward being the receiving end of collateral damage due to SpongeBob's poor driving skills and the various types of slapstick that comes from it. Before I continue, yes, this was intended to be comedic, and I, personally, found it to be very funny, and I don't give a rat's ass what the ScumbBob Wiki says about it. Going back on topic, there was this one scene in the episode that involves SpongeBob rear-ending Squidward, which causes him to fly out of his boat, only to be crushed by a spiky steamroller. In fact, this scene also has been the subject of a few internet memes and is even referred to as the Squidward killing machine. This just makes me wonder, why would a vehicle like this even exist in the first place? Especially since the top steamroller is clearly obstructing the view of the driver. I mean, the obvious answer is that it's just a cartoon and a vehicle like this only exists for comedic purposes. But that answer would not make for a very interesting video, so I'm looking into other reasons beyond that. After much thought and looking back on the series, I have two possible reasons as for why a vehicle like this would exist in the SpongeBob universe. For both of these reasons, I will be using bits and pieces from other SpongeBob episodes as evidence for my claims, and even quotes from the show's creators as well. With all of that out of the way, let's dive down below in the deep blue sea. For my two possible reasons, one reason is surprisingly uplifting, while the other is much, much darker. I'm going to start with the more uplifting reason first, with that reason being, it's a way of collecting trash. Why I believe this is not only because the spikes on it makes it look like it was designed to pick up trash efficiently, but it's also been mentioned on numerous occasions that the city of Bikini Bottom has harsh penalties for littering. In the Season 5 episode Blackjack, when SpongeBob's family is celebrating Blackjack's release from prison, it was revealed that the crime that got him locked away was littering. In the Season 4 episode, Driven to Tears, SpongeBob was given a 90-day sentence for ripping up Patrick's license and throwing it away, which was considered littering. It should also be worth mentioning that in that same exact episode, Patrick was running away from the cops and damaged public property by driving into a billboard. But apparently neither of those things mattered, and it was just the littering that struck a nerve with the cops. In the Season 3 episode, SpongeBob Meets the Strangler, when SpongeBob calls the police on the Tattletale Strangler for littering, the cops reassure him that he's going to be in jail for a really long time.
Hi, officers! So he's going to jail, right?
Who? Strangler?
Yeah, Strangler.
Oh yeah, he's going to jail for a long time.
Even though he has a reputation for strangling anyone who turns him in, and that could also be another reason why he's going to jail for a really long time, but the fact that they arrested him for littering just shows that the Bikini Bottom police force has no tolerance for littering. There have also been entire episodes that focus on freeing Bikini Bottom of litter, such as the Season 7 episode Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful, and the Season 11 episode Sanitation Insanity. While it may appear funny at first that Bikini Bottom treats littering as a crime that's on par with murder and theft, but if you look deeper behind the scenes with the show's creator, Steven Hillenburg, it starts to make more sense. In a New York Times interview with SpongeBob crew member Sherm Cohen, he recalled that Hillenburg told him, "My biggest nightmare is that I'm going to be at the beach one day and one of these dolls is going to wash up on the shore like garbage." Cohen said that, being a marine biologist who also surfs, Steven doesn't want to be responsible for bringing a glut of garbage into the world. The fact that Steven Hillenburg's main concern about the show becoming ultra popular is that the merchandise being added to landfills and garbage heaps just shows that Hillenburg's stance against littering is very prevalent in the show. Which is why I believe that this spiky steamroller being a quick trash catcher makes a lot of sense given the context of the show and the vision of its creator. After explaining the more uplifting reason, let's finally head into the darker reason. That reason being, this vehicle is used for picking up and disposing of corpses. My reasoning for this argument is that Bikini Bottom's population has been incredibly inconsistent throughout the series. If you look at many of the wide shots of Bikini Bottom, it gives off the impression that Bikini Bottom was meant to be a large city. The claim of Bikini Bottom being a large city is backed up in the Season 6 episode, Nautical Novice, when the Bikini Bottom Museum of Boating starts moving because the museum itself is a giant boat. Mrs. Puff says the line, "We're going to flatten millions of innocent lives," when the boat starts to move very fast, which implies that Bikini Bottom has well over 1 million inhabitants. In the Season 2 episode, Patty Hype, when SpongeBob opens up his stand selling Pretty Patties, where it becomes a massive success. SpongeBob then shouts this line to the crowd,
Who's number 46,853?
This could imply that Bikini Bottom's population is around 50,000. There is also evidence from the series that contradicts that, and Bikini Bottom is more like a small town. In the Season 4 episode, Krusty Towers, Squidward says that Bikini Bottom
It's in the middle of scenic nowhere.
which gives the impression that Bikini Bottom is a small rural settlement. In the Season 3 episode, Squilliam Returns, Squidward tries to brush off Squilliam's success in an act of jealousy by saying,
Anyone can be a big shot in a hick town like Bikini Bottom.
The fact that Squidward called Bikini Bottom a hick town shows that it's not the big city that it's implied to be. I haven't mentioned this yet, but there is a confirmed number for Bikini Bottom's population. In the Season 5 episode, Whatever Happened to SpongeBob, when SpongeBob decides to leave Bikini Bottom after being an accidental nuisance to all of his companions. We then see the sign of Bikini Bottom, which SpongeBob reads before his departure. Welcome to Bikini Bottom, population 538. This is the only time in the entire series where we got an exact number for Bikini Bottom's population. So this is the one that I'm going with. You may be asking yourself, what does Bikini Bottom's population have to do with the corpse disposal theory? To which I respond with, if Bikini Bottom is supposed to be built like a big city with many different buildings, why does it only have a population of 538? My argument for this is that Bikini Bottom is heavily subjected to mass extinctions. This is evident throughout many episodes of the show that many of the background characters just so happen to die or explode randomly. Here are some examples.
Am I ugly? My eyes! My eyes!
Since Bikini Bottom's residents are so easily prone to death, there are a lot of frequent mass extinction events, and that machine just so happens to make it easy to just pick up the corpses that are probably lying around on the streets of Bikini Bottom. There's also the likely scenario that Bikini Bottom just had a mass extinction event at the time the driving safety film was being made. Which would make sense given that this safety film is sponsored by the citizens of Bikini Bottom United to keep SpongeBob SquarePants off the road and out of boats altogether organization. Which implies that the last mass extinction Bikini Bottom faced was likely at the expense of SpongeBob's poor driving skills. Sure, Bikini Bottom may have had a lot more than 538 inhabitants, but those mass extinctions probably took a drastic toll on their numbers. Now that just leaves one more question. How are the corpses disposed? You could argue that they got a proper burial, but I have a much darker theory. You know how Plankton owns a restaurant called The Chum Bucket, right? Well, do you know what chum is? If you don't, chum is meat-based ground bait that's typically thrown into the water in order to lure various marine animals, usually larger game fish, to a designated fishing ground. So the target animals are more easily caught by hooking or spearing. Chum typically consists of fresh chunks of fish meat with bone and blood, the scent of which attracts predatory fish, particularly sharks, bullfishes, tunas, and groupers. After describing what chum is, you can finally see why no one wants to eat at the chum bucket. The theory that I have is that Plankton buys the ground up corpses that have been picked up by this vehicle from the local Bikini Bottom government, which he then sells as chum at the chum bucket. The only reason why the Bikini Bottom government does this is to try to take advantage of the many tragedies that strike this town to add any amount of money to their budget that they possibly can. At the end of the day, don't take what I say as the truth. I just made this video for entertainment purposes and thought it would be fun to think of how a vehicle that was only there for comedic purposes could have a hidden deeper meaning behind that. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.